Thank you all. The general question that one is always asked at this point in time is, why did you want to translate a novel? And then I think there were a couple of people who asked me, when did you think you knew enough Marathi to be able to translate the novel? Then in the back of their head there is the thing, let's see whether he answers in Marathi or English. And then we'll judge. So to me the answer to that, and I'm saying it up front so that it should be here, is that I am still learning English. I'm in a constant struggle to try and translate what's in my head into words in English. This is not because it's my second language or anything. English is my language. I don't have any other. But even English is work. It's hard work right now. So Marathi is hard work raised to Kundal Kare. And it is a big Kundal. So it is a lot of work. Yeah? And then, but on the other hand, when I always feel that the story of Cobalt Blue, the translation of Cobalt Blue, is a story about friendship and faith. Because I read a piece by Shanta Gokhale, who was asked to nominate novels in Marathi that she thought were of significance in the past few years. Hey Geev.
Hi.
Nice to see you. Happy another translator. Yay. So I read that this Cobalt Blue, and I rang her up and I said, hey, can I read this in translation? So she said, no, it's not been translated yet. Then I was walking around Dadar, and walking around Dadar, there is a lovely little bookshop where Marathi bookshops, you don't actually walk in and browse. You tell them what you want and they shout it to the back, and then someone comes and slaps it in front of you, and then you get out. Yeah. They don't know why you should be buying books and worrying them. But anyway, so I bought the book and I took it home, and the first line of the book immediately struck a chord with me as a Bombay boy. It talks about being alone in the house. Now, if you have lived as a person in a flat, in a small flat, 400 square feet, and now you can laugh at us, Bombay people, your 400 square feet is the dispensary at the back of the house in Goa. But in Bombay, it's the whole house. If you've lived there with 4 other people and you're growing up, the need for privacy becomes acute. The need to be alone becomes acute, because in that moment of solitude and safety, solitude and safety is the house at home. You can be alone outside, but you're not safe. You're in the open world. And you want to be at home because you want to explore who you are in that solitude. That's why you want to be alone. And you want to explore your physicality, you want to explore the inside being person. You want time and space to yourself. The first line of Sachin's book talked about this moment, about this moment not being what it should have been, not being the perfect moment, no longer being the perfect moment, because there's an absence. And I started reading the book and I finished it that night, which for me is not an effort in English. I read a book a day, but for Marathi or for any other language, it's almost like it's like a revelation. If you think, oh, I'm getting to the end of this, my goodness. It was magnificent. And the next morning I rang up Shanta and I said, do you think I could translate this book? And I said, I want to translate this book. And here again comes faith and friendship. If Shanta had said you with a question mark, I would not have translated. Instead, Shanta said you with an exclamation mark. And the difference in that punctuation made me feel that I could do this. There's some sense that someone is saying, try karna, kya hai? So, and then of course I wrote to Sachin, and Sachin said that he'd be happy if I could give it a shot. And over the next 6 months I struggled with it. The story is simple. After I finished the first draft, I went and read it to Shanta. Shanta approved of it, and then I gave it to Sachin. Sachin had some modifications that he wanted to make, and then we sent it off to the publisher, and the first publisher who we sent it to accepted it. And then they gave us some cash, which was nice also because I had never had cash. So it was joy. Tu hasma, tu filmmaker, tu holy khelta hai cash se. You play. Anyway.
This is how we have worked.
And after that, I mean, it went out and it, you know, Sachin, you live under a good star, yeah? It, Brahmino ko khilaya hoga, something, because it's got really good reviews, and you know, I don't think we could, either of us could have been better blessed. So this is my first outing of translation. I'd like to thank Vivek Menezes, because you know, I was looking at the translating panel here this morning, and I'm even looking at the audience, and there are some you know, sort of really reputed translators. Give with his long promised a co. And Aranjit Hoskote, who's not here, damn his eyes. Yeah. But you know, and on the panel were people who have been reading since the 1970s, the 1980s. So to be part of that tribe makes me feel really privileged, and sort of like from time to time I go to the room into the room and close the door and say, eek! And then I come back out. It's just that. And suppose it's the same thing being a filmmaker, no? Suddenly you're ginti mein.
Well, not, it's, I think I've been kind of avoiding lit fests till now. Yesterday was my first day. Felt really wonderful because, you know, when you go to a film festival, there are films to be seen, like you actually see a film. At Lit Fest, you don't sit and read books.
Yeah.
So I was always wondering, like what to do. I mean, just sit and hear people talking, or people would, when you're talking, people would sit and hear. But yesterday was interesting, and so this is my second day, and I'm enjoying. I hope you. Sorry. Yeah, he also saw films in the Lit Fest, yeah. Avijit's film, for example, and Pinty's, of course, yeah. So I started with Dr. Geet Patel's session yesterday. But yeah, feels interesting, and would be very happy to have more like conversation, maybe Q&A. We could really start off with that if you have any questions.
Because I think actually, see, there are two things. The reason why Sachin and I are here is because we'll both get little paisa when you go out and buy the book. So we want you to buy the book. We are not going to read to you, because you should be reading the book, and you know, so that's the deal. And actually in all Lit Fests, and he's the virgin, I'm the whore. I'm the Lit Fest slut. I've been to every Lit Fest. Chal, bol tu, kaun sa Lit Fest. Okay, so in every Lit Fest that I have gone, what has really mattered is always the audience. Because for a writer, and I think for a filmmaker also, once you put your product out, you don't know where it goes. You don't know who's reading it, you don't know who's connecting. So in the book that I'm editing right now, and I have the proofs in my room, which is Maps for a Mortal Moon, the selected prose of Adil Jassawala, he has a beautiful essay called Who Reads Us? Where he's asking, who reads us? Who is that person who picks up the book and for whom it makes a slight difference? Because if you think about it, no, we all belong in some ways to the nation of the world. And we shape this nation together. Some of us write, but even the reader shapes the nation of the world, contributes a little to the outlines of it. So the book that you pick up is also a choice that is made. And that choice also slightly realigns the universe. So you pick up porn. You pick up a porn novel and that shifts the universe a little. You pick up a literary novel and it shifts the universe a little. Good, bad, I don't know. I'm not even beginning to go there, but I'm just saying, together, all of us share this world, this nation of the world, and we're shaping it in every moment of this interaction. And therefore, this is a very privileged interaction. This is why I go to Lit Fest, because suddenly I see who might possibly be reading the book. And of course I know that every book lover has more books than they can possibly read. There are piles right next to the bed where the books that you want to read and the books that you ought to read and the books that you should be reading are all superseded by the book that you want to read. It's simple. There at the top is 50 Shades of Grey. That trumps everything underneath, including the Prakrit poetry and the translation of the novel, everything trumped. There, the finger. Oh, sorry, now let's not go there. Okay, so anyone who has a question has, okay, just, yeah, Mr. Zanka.
I'm not familiar with the book, so please take us through some of the difficulties, particularly because you're from Bombay and the language, this thing that you had encountered. It would be interesting to have an account of that.
Okay, I'd like first Sachin to talk about just the shape and origin of the original novel, and then I'll come in with the translation, because I think that would be fair.
It was written in about 2002. I had shifted to Bombay. I had moved out of my home.
And I'd like to say that, you know, it is terribly unfair that a 21-year-old should have been able to write that novel. You were 21.
I was 21, yes. So I had just decided I would stay out of my home, move out. And I was back from Paris after finishing.
Back from Paris.
And it was in fashion not to stay with parents. So I said, even I won't stay with my parents. And I moved to Bombay to do struggle in films because I wanted to make my own film. And there was a lot of time on hand because there was no work. And that was a phase in my life where I was really, really angry at all women. Because the whole teenage, men were snatched, taken away emotionally, physically from me. And every young, beautiful woman was my competitor. Because all the whole ticket, like since the age of puberty, I guess. And I was angry. Every woman was a competitor. And it always happened that, you fall in love with a man. And because gay men are not surfaced, right, in a society, you can't pinpoint. You just fall in love with a man. You don't fall in love with a gay man because gay men don't exist, only you exist. And one by one, girls snatch them away. You can't love them. You can like them. You can love them, but they won't love you. They'll only love girls. So I think that anger was, now I think back, and I think that anger was the genesis, the origin of the whole feeling. And I couldn't get angry at those girls because I knew what's the game. So there was a sister and a brother that emerged from the narrative. I only wrote the brother's narrative first. Had no thought about writing anything from Anuja's side, the sister's side. And a few months went by. I looked back at the text, read it out to friends, and one of my friends suggested, even she could have a story to tell. It could be your own biased, prejudiced, perspective towards women. Because in Pune, it was very, very much in fashion that time. The girls in demand were those going to Narmada Bachao Andolan, dog lovers, environmental conscious, all those, sprinkled with feminism kind of girls. I was really angry at, temporarily, not now. So Anuja is like that. And so, it's out of that anger actually I got rid of that anger after writing it. It was an interesting process. So I was 21.
Okay, in fairness, when I read Cobalt Blue, I have to say that the structure of the novel is one of the most interesting things about it. So that the first half is where Tanay, who's a young man, talks about his lost love, who is the young boarder who has come to live with them, who's a painting student. The second half is where Anuja, who's Tanay's sister, talks about her lost love, who is the painter or the boarder who has come to live with them. So suddenly what you have, I thought, when I read the book, was a moral tale about how Indian families will talk about anything except what really counts. So that we will discuss the weather, we will discuss how to make the perfect biryani. We will talk about the neighbors' indiscretions. We will talk about the political situation. But we will never discuss our love lives or our sex lives over the family table. That's just not on. So there is a deep silence underneath both Tanai's life and Anuja's life. And it is the deadening silence of the middle class anxiety about the fact that our children are also sexual beings. We can't take that in India. We don't love, we may even know this at a certain level, we may confront it at a certain level, but we do not want the details. And often in the details, for novels, for art, for poetry, for cinema, for any of the things that we do, often the details are where God hides. God is in the details. So the conversations that Anuja and Tanay do not have, tear them apart, even as the conversations that they do have with the painter, break them, but rebuild them, reconstruct them. So for me, this book was a clinical examination, a rigorous examination of the destructive and constructive power of love. Just purely love. And at no point in this entire narrative is there a sense that this love is reciprocated by the painter, but there is no sense that it is rejected either. So it's absolutely, as far as Cobalt, Sachin will tell you about the book from his point of view, which for me, as someone who came to it as just as someone who had no expectations, because I knew Sachin's films, I'd seen Gun and a couple of others, but I had no expectations of him as a writer. For me, the book was this amazing tightrope walk across what should have been lands that were really familiar, the middle class, but were very different. Here, the topography of the house is part of the way this whole thing plays out. And it's wonderful that, Tanay talks about the upstairs room as the tower room, the Mano room. But Anuja, who is much more casual with her body, with her world, talks about the upstairs room as the upstairs room. It's in those small details that you see how these two people have been shaped. And I think that's for me what really made the novel powerful. Anil, does that answer your question, or do you want to?
No, I want to translate. There must be some peculiar places that you want to start from.
One second, could you hold on? Let's just pass on mic.
Okay.
No, what I was seeking from you was basically from one language to another, being familiar with the environment. Any specific problems or points or something that you learned newly that you'd like to share?
Just constantly, like almost, one of the things that you do when you're translating is you're unpacking a word. So you unpack the word, and when you unpacked it, it lies there looking up at you, and you think, my goodness, how do I fit you into your new context? Okay? So there's a moment, for instance, when the boarder has come down for lunch, and I, who wants to know about the boarder's caste, okay, is asking him what is his name, and he's very reluctant. He does not give a second name. He doesn't believe in using Arnav. His name is his Pechan. That's what he's saying. And then he says, give me a poli. Okay, he's not using chapati. He's saying poli. Now this makes him a Brahmin. As soon as that makes him a Brahmin, I relaxes. Now she doesn't need to know his name. Now he's okay. He is Savarna. Amsa. It's fine. It's finished. Okay, this works so elegantly and rigorously in Sachin's Marathi novel, because he knows this etymology, and its equation with caste will play out perfectly for his audience. It will not for an English-speaking audience. English-speaking audiences in Pune perhaps, in Mumbai perhaps, but certainly not in Chennai. Right? So then when I opened that out, I had to make that family of words, that idea, comfortable in its new English environment. So I always say a translation is like relocating a family. You can't just take it and thump it down and expect it to grow. It has to develop these kind of like roots and associations, and you have to fit it, and you have to sort of like nurture it a bit and keep shifting it around and see how it works. So this is just one example. There are other huge risks that, there's a moment, for instance, when Tanay is obviously a slightly girlish boy, he's gay, and there's a fascist cousin who wants to train him to be a boy. Okay? So, chatti pehn. So one day he's walking down the courtyard and he gets slammed on the leg, and Tanay and his cousin says to him, "How you walk so fast? Walk slowly. Walk like a man." Wait. Walk slowly, walk like a man. Don't men walk fast? Roger Bannister was a woman? No, hold on. But then you actually think about it for a moment and make a little performance. Remember that Tanay at this point in time is carrying the ice cream, okay? And he's all excited because there's the ice cream. Okay. And Tanay. Okay. Oh my. Yeah. Now this. Sorry, I'm dropping my ice cream. And now the male walk is supposed to be slow, big steps. So this cousin makes him put his legs in the tiles and walk like this, so that he will walk with his legs apart.
Give that mic. Go.
Sorry.
Give the other mic. Go.
And to me there was something, the cousin needs to probably have his head examined. I thought, and there's another moment in that same, this thing where it says, I then learned many things about what men did and what they didn't do. Men do not change their clothes in rooms with mirrors. How many men recognize this as part of masculinity? I didn't know. Men do not eat tamarind, raw tamarind, because girls eat sour things. So these are specificities of a certain social class and a certain social culture that produces that. I don't think any Tamilian man would not eat tamarind. That'd be like the whole of the cuisine is kind of like kicked out in one fell swoop. Right? No, it's puberty also. Just pre-puberty, there's a great heightened need for vitamin C that makes girls want to eat a lot more tamarind and a lot more sour things. This afterwards, people have explained to me, I'm telling you, if you're looking suspicious, I don't know. I can't tell you where the scientific, the evidence for this is. But these are the things, Anil, that I learned. Next question.
I have the mic.
And there's a moment where he's talking in the middle of a whole group and he wants to say something, something about his caste and whatnot. And there's some line that says, Sangla ghoda hota. So I'm translating and I wrote, there was a really nice horse. And I'm thinking, no, where is this horse? Why is this horse here suddenly? And then I realized he means I was a full-grown boy at that time. So Changla Ghoda Hota, I was like a good horse. So suddenly you can be tripped up by another language's surprises. Though I must say Pohaila is just like me being stupid and not taking a moment to think, and being, you're actually so worried about emotional tonality, getting the girls register right and getting the gay boys register right and getting everything else, like his first line, the first line. It took me about 3 months to get that first line's register right, simply because of its complexity. So I'll just read you that first line.
आपल्या दोघांनाही हवी असलेली गोष्ट घडताना तेव्हा तू तिथे नसणं हे काही आपल्यासाठी नवीन नाही. आजही आता तू इथे नाहीस.
That is not an easy sentence, so it is. After working with it up and down, splitting it into 2, splitting it into 3, then this is the line that came out. Because also I wanted to keep the fact that he has written a complex line. But I needed to be a fluid line. Complex but fluid. And it may not have worked, but this is my solution. That you should not be here when something we've both wanted happens is no new thing for me. Today too, as always, you're not here. I want this line to ring with, I wanted it to ring with loss. I wanted it to have the quiet of a house of silence where there's nobody in the house. But I also wanted it to be Sachin's line. It's not my line. I would write this differently. I have to be, in some ways, faithful to whom I see. We had a translation discussion which was lovely in the morning, and I much enjoyed listening to all of them. But for me, Shanta once said in a discussion in Pune, she said, when you are writing your own novel, you can be God. You invent universes, people, events, situations. With a stroke of a pen, you kill someone. 3 words, 2 words, then he died, and off with his head. When you are translating, you become the Bhakt. You are no longer God. The God is someone else. And this requires you, centrally, to leave your ego at the door. To say, now this is Sachin's work. I must pay respect to it. Because this is why we translate. Because we respect.
Thank you so much for that.